call this meeting to order. Mrs. Werter, would you please call the roll?
Chairman Everett Roy.
Present?
Board Member Steve Banta is absent. Roland Barrera.
Here.
Sylvia Campos. Here. Catherine Garza. Ma'am? You're here? Okay.
Garcia.
Garcia, I'm sorry. Yes, ma'am. Jesse Gilbert.
Present.
Paulette Guajardo.
Present.
Gail Hernandez.
Here.
Roberto Hernandez is absent. Michael Hunter.
Here.
David Lowe.
Here.
Jim Klein. Mr.
Here.
Klein is... Okay. Oh, are you virtual? Okay. Jim Klein. Mike Pesley. Here. Carol Scott is absent. Dan Suckley.
Here.
We do have a quorum present to conduct the meeting.
Thank you. Okay, first is public comment. Is there anyone here that would like to make public comment? Mrs. Werter, did we receive any written public comments?
No, sir.
Okay. Seeing that there's no public comment, we'll move on. Please be advised that the Open Meetings Act prohibits the Board of Directors from responding and discussing your comments at length. The law only authorizes them to do the following: make a statement of factual information, recite an existing policy in response to an inquiry. I'm sorry. Next is the minutes.
I move for approval.
We have a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
I'm sorry, was that, somebody say something?
I think that was Mr. Klein.
Okay,
Okay,
Aye.
he said aye.
all right. The motion carries. Next, we have a financial report, and there is no action required.
Good morning, Chairman and Board. Heather Hurlbert, Director of Finance. So the financials we're presenting today are the financials for the period ending January 31st, 2023. So an overall view of the financials, we began the fiscal year with a fund balance of $233,000. That is an unaudited fund balance, but we did not anticipate any type of significant adjustments to that fund balance. Revenues year to date are $583,000. And between January and February, we will realize the majority of the property tax collections for the TIRZ. Expenditures year to date are, we've had a payout for one of our incentive programs of $16,000, and then we've had $25,000 for administrative services, and that goes back to for the staff time and resources that are used to help manage the TIRZ. So that leaves us with an ending fund balance of $775,000 as of the end of January 31st. We do have outstanding commitments of $486,000, so that does leave a fund balance of $289,000 available for commitments, and we will go over what those commitments are and in more detail. So this is just a basic kind of a cash flow of what can be expected over the next several years for planning purposes as we're considering possible other programs along the way. What we do is that we keep our estimated annual revenue flat. We don't anticipate, and we update that as we have more information. We list all of our current and future incentives. We leave our administrative expenses flat also just for estimation purposes. And then this final column is what the estimated fund balance available for commitments would be over the next several years. So looking at those specific commitments that we have, under our project-specific program, we do have one commitment with Casitas Del Mar. We will talk a little bit more about what these projects are at the later agenda item, but we anticipate that we would begin paying on this one in fiscal year 24 based off of their construction schedule. Then looking at the North Beach Living Initiative program, again, Casitas Del Mar did qualify for both of those programs. And so again, we anticipate that we would not begin paying anything out until fiscal year 24. Looking at the North Beach property improvement, we did have an incentive that has already been paid out for '23 for the Breakers Condominium. Their second payment will be in fiscal year '24. And then the Puerto del Sol RV Park will begin payments on those probably in fiscal year '24 after completion. And those will be paid out over 2 years. And then the North Beach infrastructure improvements, Puerto del Sol RV Park also qualified for that program, and we'll begin those payments most likely at the end of '23 or beginning of '24. So that does conclude my presentation, and I'm available for any questions.
Thank you. Next, is executive session. There is no executive session today, so I will move on to our agenda items. And the first agenda item is a motion approving a tax increment reinvestment zone, number 4 board meeting calendar for 2023.
Yes, so this is something that we bring forward to the board. We have not met since we adopted the budget back in '22. And so this is the first time that we've been in front of the board to be able to adopt the calendar. We do not, we have today's meeting scheduled in March, and then we have 2 meetings in June and July scheduled. That's at that time we'll work on the budget. So normally we bring us a recommended budget and discussion in June to the board, and then the board will formulate a recommendation to city council for the budget. And then we have another meeting scheduled in October. If there are things that come up in between those scheduled times, we can always call special meeting to consider anything along the way. So we are proposing that we would have the meetings June, July, and October.
Are there any questions from the board or staff? How about from public comment? Okay, seeing that there's no questions or public comment, I'd like to entertain a motion to approve this item.
So moved.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries. Thank you. Next, we have election of officers today for a vice chair. So I'd like to open the floor for nominations for vice chair, and I'd like to start actually with a nomination for council member Michael Hunter. We need to make sure that in his last term that he's well engaged.
Yes.
Keep him busy.
I will second that nomination, Chairman. Yes, sir.
So I have a motion and a second.
Yes, sir.
Are there any other?
Nominations?
Okay. With that, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr.
Welcome.
Chairman.
Okay, and then item number H, we have a presentation item today, which is the North Beach project update.
Yes. We wanted to provide an update. We do have a lot of new members on the board, and so we wanted to provide an update of the projects that we already have commitments on and the status of those projects. So just a general overview, we have 4 different projects that we have utilized within the project and financing plan. So just a reminder, for the TIRZ, the project and financing plan lays out how the money can be used. And so we have different buckets, different programs and different money allocations that are allocated through the project and financing plan. The project and financing plan is a living, breathing document, and so we bring that forward with changes based off of feedback from the board and/or needs that have been recognized by staff, and we'll bring those forward for any potential changes. So right now, we do have 4 different programs that are being utilized within the project and financing plan. Some of these very closely mirror the downtown TIRZ programs, such as the Living Initiative and the project-specific program. But within the project and financing plan for North Beach, we also have a property improvement program along with an infrastructure project program. And so right now, what we have that has been committed is we have 3 different projects. One is the Casitas Del Mar, and we'll go into a little bit more detail on that. And so that one is receiving a funding commitment under both the Living Initiative Program of $140,000, of up to $140,000, and then also under the North Beach Project Specific Program for up to $230,000. Then we have the Puerto del Sol RV Park, which qualifies under the North Beach Property Improvement Program, along with the North Beach Infrastructure Project Program. And so under the Property Improvement Program, there's a commitment of up to $224,000, and under the Infrastructure Project Program, $217,000. And then we do have a completed project, which was the Breakers Condominium. They qualified under the North Beach Property Improvement Program, and I did not notate the dollar amount, but I believe it was a little over $100,000 that we awarded them. So we'll go into a little bit more detail on these. So looking at the Casitas Del Mar, this is a project for up to 14 rental units on North Beach. The proposed project was 8 one-bedroom apartments and 6 three-bedroom townhomes. Looking at providing for green energy within those apartments, providing amenities, including parking under the units, so the units would be raised above that flood level, along with a swimming pool and landscaping for the appeal of the area. What was specifically incentivized was a portion for landscaping in the pool, for the permit fees, tap fees, and sewer and water distribution, the sprinkler and fire alarm, safety railings, ADA lifts, the solar panels, and lighting. So the anticipated total project cost was almost $2.3 million. And between the two, we had $229,000 for up to for the downtown, for the Living Initiative, which is, for the project specific, which is up to 10% of the total project cost. And then we also had an incentive up to $140,000 for the Living Initiative program, which is a total of $10,000 per unit. So this is it is continuing to move forward. The developer has hit some snags, as we've seen through some of our projects that came forward at the beginning, in the middle of COVID. There was a lot of the estimates that, due to supply chain and due to the increase in construction materials, the project has increased in cost. And the developer is still very committed to this project and has completed the plans, has had several preliminary reviews with development services, and they should be submitting their final plans within the next couple of months. They do anticipate starting the groundwork before, I think, by the summertime is what they had proposed. So it is still moving forward a little bit slower than what they initially had anticipated. They did come forward last year for an extension on those milestones, and so now that extension has been to 2027. That was approved by the board last year. So any questions on the Casitas Del Mar? Okay. So within your presentation, there are some concept drawings of what had been proposed by the developer. And then moving on to the Breakers Condominium project. So this project is completed. What this was a kind of a refresh of landscaping, a replacement of the wood fence with the aluminum wrought iron fencing, painting to the exterior of the building, and then new balcony railings on the bay side. So a spruce up of the exterior of the building. And so the total project cost of this was for $380,000, and that was specifically for the landscaping and the aluminum fencing. The incentive value was amount not to exceed $32,000. So this has been completed, and they have received their first payout of approximately $16,000. And then the second half will be paid out in fiscal year '24. And so within the presentation, here are some before and afters of the improvements that were done. I know that they were still working on the landscaping at the time we took these pictures, just because of the timing of it, but they are planning on continuing and sprucing up the landscaping. And then before and after pictures of the metal fence, the wood fence versus the metal fencing. So then the final project is the Porto del Sol RV Park, and this is the RV park that is at the north part of the island. Many of you may have seen that if you traveled to and from Portland. It's very visible there at the end of the island. And so this project qualified for two different incentives. One was the property improvement program, and then the other was the infrastructure project program. So the property improvement program the project was to do landscaping and fencing, a pool deck, and a pergola, take all of the electrical underground, to build the whole site up 3 feet to get it above, to help with the flooding in that area, and then actually use vinyl bulkheading on 3 sides of that to help also improve with the drainage and the tidal flooding that occurs over there. So what was specifically incentivized was the landscaping and the fencing, and then the pool deck, the pool fencing, and the pergola. So the anticipated cost was almost $1.8 million. And the incentive value for the property improvement program was up to $224,000, and then for the North Beach Infrastructure Project Program was up to $217,000. And so with the project incentive infrastructure program, that was actually building the site up and creating that vinyl bulkheading to help with that tidal flooding that occurred on that side. This project is 90% complete. They do anticipate that it'll be done by the end of April. They did not start the project until September, October timeframe after the peak season of last summer. And so I know we've walked it a couple of times, and it looks very nice. So some before and after pictures. If you look at the parking pad, it had been a non-paved. They've gone in and paved and put concrete pads for parking. The overhead power lines coming underground, so that visual clutter of those overhead power lines has been removed. The fencing in the pool area, they've put up a solid fencing and are installing a pool and an amenity center for the people who stay there. And that is it. So I'm available for any questions if anyone has any.
Yes, Board Member Loeb.
Yeah, I've got 2 questions. First is on RV parks. I know in the past the city's gone back and forth. I'm assuming that since there was support on this project, the city's generally okay with the idea of more RV parks on North Beach as long as they're of that quality that we just saw, or?
I mean, I can't speak for the city council as a whole. I know that this board felt like that this was a valuable project on North Beach. But yeah, I can't speak to what the general consensus of the council would be.
I know historically, I'm kind of new and back to this, but I was involved in this a long time ago. And one of the issues is finding developers who can build something that can deal with the flooding issues. And the nice thing about RV parks is most of the value is gone when the hurricane comes. You can move everything. So the other is there's been a long-term project to expand the wetland there to buy it. Has there been any staff work? And I know in the past there's been discussions about using the TIRZ money to match with federal or state money. And I know there's been some state and federal programs rolling out. What's the status of that?
Yeah, Commissioner, Mr. Loeb, we've done a lot of work on what is known as the Eco Park.
Yeah.
And that's that wetlands area. There was some land mitigation as part of the Harbor Bridge project. So just recently I was talking with Councilman Suckley and Councilman Roy about giving a briefing to City Council because the park is taking shape now. One of the residents there is pretty pleased with the migratory birds that are showing up. In the 2022 bond program that the vote is overwhelmingly approved in November, there were additional dollars to continue the design work of that park and then do more construction. So some of the issues we'll be talking to the council about soon, and North Beach is a meeting on North Beach, a quarterly meeting with the residents. Some of the issues we'll be talking about soon is the territorial boundaries, who owns the park, who owns the underlying land, who's maintaining it, what's the strategy for the bond program. So we're real excited about that park. The Eco Park, we refer to it as the Eco Park. and it's a wetlands area, but it's a home for birds now, and some of the unique vegetation that is there on North Beach.
Okay, great. I mean, I think, I don't know if there's been a wetlands delineation study done over there, but I think some of those private owners own land that is fundamentally undevelopable, and they may not know it. So, I mean, this process may be an opportunity to get them some money and get the land protected. So I hope you all pursue that. And I know, as, you know, it's not my call, but we'd be great with our contribution to this fund going if any money is needed to do that.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions or comments? Yeah. Go ahead, Chairman Pusley. Councilmember Pusley.
Heather, one of the things that we did with the downtown TIRZ, when there started, some of the property owners there started utilizing different canopies for the sidewalk areas and whatnot. I brought that to the attention of the DMD, and they came up with a standardized plan so that we didn't end up with 27 different versions of canopies along the sidewalks. And if you go back to your pictures, I know they already took the slides down. If you go back to the pictures showing what the difference looks like between the wooden fence that existed at the condominiums before and after, there you go. What a world of a difference that makes.
Yes.
So is it not beyond the realm of possibility that we could develop a sort of a standard for the North Beach TIRZ that would encourage, the fencing like you see on the right versus the old wooden fencing, which in salt air doesn't hold up very well?
Yes,
So-
there definitely is the opportunity for that. Staff internally, we've talked about the fact that as, you know, this is basically the third year of this TIRZ that has collected increment. So we haven't, we are planning on hoping to bring forward some suggestions for projects and for design standards and things like that to the board for consideration over the next year. As we gather more increment and are able to incentivize, what are truly the needs within North Beach on this, putting in some design recommendations and/or, how those incentives are tied to that. So yes, that is something that is on our project list, and we are working on that.
Okay. Yeah, I just think it'd be really good if we establish that sooner than later
Sure.
before we get into many more of these projects so that we have some control over. These were both great projects, and what a world of a difference it makes in the way they look, especially the RV park, which has been there a long, long time, as Mr. Loeb explained, but the upgrades that they've made there are just phenomenal. I drove out the other day and they look really, really nice. So kudos to the developer.
Right, yeah, and Councilman, just to add on to that, there's a new owner, so the prior owner was sold out or bought out, and the new developer has done some substantial improvements to include raising it and putting in a lot of concrete, and so it's a brand-new owner. It is, I think, the only RV park on North Beach, so there's not a plethora of them over there. This is the only one on North Beach. We do have a number that City Council's approved zoning changes for on Flower Bluff and some on the island, but this is the only one on North Beach. So.
Yeah. Also, as we study the Echo Park, I just want to bring this to your attention, Peter, to go along with, also what Mr. Lowe brought to our attention. When we studied the Echo Park area several years ago, what we found was, in the initial testing, that the water that gets trapped in that area tends to stay more salty than brackish than it does fresh, and so some of the shorebirds won't go there because of the brackishness of the water. So we had talked about developing a way to pump more water, fresh water, into that area. So as we develop that, that's something we need to keep in mind.
Mayor?
Yeah, so Peter, the developer is not, it's not the one that came to us initially, that
Yeah,
bought
it's
the property?
It's the same developer that bought.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
I thought you meant
actually, we
that was
just-
a new owner.
Yeah, actually, we leased them the property.
Right.
There was one option to sell it, but we leased it for.
It's those
numerous-
same.
It's the same
Oh,
person.
okay.
Yes, same developer.
Okay,
Yeah.
yeah, thank you.
And Councilmember Campos.
Thank you. I'm going to have to say I disagree with Councilman Pusley, only because of the uniform, about what he's proposing that we consider, that we sort of uniform the fences and that kind of thing. I think what makes a community is, some deviation. I mean, I prefer, the little cottage-style fencing, and I think that's what makes some of, at least North Beach, at the that I remember from a long time ago, was those kind of cute little things that made it, kind of unique. And if you start to make it all the same, it just loses its personality, I guess, is the way I would say it. So I just would like to offer, just that perspective that maybe we don't need to go all uniform, but yes. And again, I think the mayor, you also mentioned about or somebody mentioned about the fencing, the metal. I mean, doesn't that rust, or, and the salt air, or I don't, just
There
common
are
sense.
specific materials
Yeah.
that aren't, so like for example, the breakers, that actually is an aluminum fencing, which withstands the sea air better than some other metals, so. Yeah, exactly. It does create that funnel. So,
Okay.
but we can definitely, take that into consideration. A lot of times, it's not a specific design that you have to do a 6-foot fence or an 8-foot fence or whatever, but it's more of recommended materials, since metal does last longer than wood. Slatted fences are better within high winds than solid fences. So we can definitely work with and bring that back to the board for consideration.
And also back to what Mr. Loeb was saying about the RVs. I personally have an Airstream, and I always thought that I could park it at North Beach. But when I spoke to someone there, she says, "Oh no, we don't allow that." And I'm like, "Really?" I said, "But it's an Airstream, And so, yeah, it would be kind of nice to look at that and see what we could do, because just, I don't know, I think they're cute. And I think there's a lot of, possibilities for just that kind of, I was looking at the internet, and I love vintage, RVs. And this could be a place for them to come and, have their show. But if it's not allowed, well, we miss out on that. So anyway, just another perspective. Thank you.
Okay. Seeing that there's no other questions or comments, I just have one comment to make myself, is that during spring break, I had the opportunity, I actually walked the entire North Beach area, and I would just encourage the board to do that. It was very busy. There's a lot of businesses that are out there that are continuing to try to survive, and let's give them their support. But seeing that there's no other further business, this meeting's adjourned. Thank you.